Talent is Overrated by Geoff Colvin. Picture this. It's the middle of 1978. Inside the massive Procter & Gamble headquarters in Cincinnati, two 22-year-olds are crammed into a cubicle together. Fresh out of college, one from Harvard, the other from Dartmouth, they're supposed to be selling Duncan Hines brownie mix. Spoiler alert, they're pretty terrible at it. Most of their time spent rewriting memos to satisfy the company's endless bureaucratic rules. Neither one has any grand vision for their future. Their main form of entertainment is crumpling up those memos and playing basketball with the trash can. One of their colleagues later remembered them like this: "We were voted the two guys probably least likely to succeed." So why am I starting with this story? Because those two young men were Jeffrey Immelt and Stephen Ballmer. Before hitting 50, they'd each become chief executive of two of the world's most valuable companies, General Electric and Microsoft. They climbed to the absolute top of the business world, completely shattering everyone's expectations from those cubicle days. Here's the question, though. How did they do it? Was it some secret God-given talent? If so, it managed to stay completely invisible for their first 22 years. Was it off-the-charts intelligence? Sure, they were bright, but so were thousands of other graduates. Was it an insane work ethic? Not back then, that's for sure. Something else was happening. Something mysterious that separates the truly exceptional from the merely good. And that's exactly the mystery we're here to solve today. My name is Host Name, and this is Podcast Name. Today, we're exploring a book that completely transforms how we think about achievement. Talent is Overrated by Geoff Colvin. For decades, we've heard two competing stories about success. The first says it comes from natural talent, that people like Mozart, Tiger Woods, or Warren Buffett were simply born different. The second claims it's all about grinding away. Just clock your 10,000 hours and you'll make it. But Geoff Colvin, drawing on mountains of scientific research, shows us that both stories are incomplete. Actually, they're mostly wrong. What truly separates world-class performers from everyone else is something entirely different. It's a specific, methodical, and widely misunderstood type of effort. Here's what I promise you. By the time we're done, you'll understand exactly what that secret is. You'll discover that greatness isn't some lottery ticket you're handed at birth. It's a path that's wide open to anyone willing to walk it. This isn't just about becoming a chief executive or a world-famous violinist. This is about unlocking your own potential in whatever matters to you, whether that's sports, academics, art, or your future career. So let's dive in and discover what really makes the great. Let's kick things off with a question that might seem obvious. Why aren't more people truly exceptional at what they do? Look around you. Think about your teachers, your neighbors, the people at your parents' workplace. Most of them are good people. They're competent. They show up every day and do their jobs well enough to keep them, maybe even climb the ladder a few times. They've been at it for 10, 20, even 30 years. And yet, after all that time, after all those hours, most people are just fine. They're not world-class. They're not running businesses like Jack Welch, playing golf like Tiger Woods, or playing violin like Itzhak Perlman. Why not? Our first instinct is to blame experience. We think the more you do something, the better you naturally become. But the research Colvin presents delivers a shocking verdict. That's simply not true. Extensive studies across multiple fields show that for most people, performance doesn't improve with experience. Sometimes, it actually gets worse. Think about that for a second. Auditors with years of experience are no better at catching corporate fraud than brand new rookies. Experienced doctors often score lower on medical knowledge tests than younger doctors. Surgeons who've spent decades in operating rooms are no better at predicting patient recovery times than residents just starting out. This phenomenon is so common that researchers have a name for it: the experience trap. We put in the years, we work diligently, but we don't actually improve. We just get more comfortable doing the same thing. We hit a plateau, park ourselves there, and stay put for the rest of our careers. So if experience isn't the answer, what is? This brings us to the second, much older explanation for greatness. It's an idea that stretches back thousands of years to ancient Greece. It's the idea of the gift. We believe that exceptional performers are simply born different. Mozart could compose music at 5 because he had a divine spark. Warren Buffett says he was hardwired at birth to allocate capital. We talk about natural salesmen or born leaders. This belief is oddly comforting. It explains why some people can do things that seem almost magical to the rest of us. And honestly, it lets us off the hook. If you're not born with the gift, then forget about reaching greatness. No point in trying too hard, right? But here's the most important, most liberating message. In Geoff Colvin's book, this belief is wrong. Decades of scientific research have dismantled this myth, piece by piece. Let's start with the poster child for natural talent, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. The story we all know is that he was a miracle of nature, composing symphonies as a child, a genius who just channeled music from the heavens. The reality is less magical and far more instructive. Mozart's father, Leopold, was a famous composer and, more importantly, an intensely dedicated and systematic music teacher. He started his son on rigorous training at age 3. Little Wolfgang's earliest compositions weren't entirely his own work. They were often corrected, arranged, or polished by his father. In fact, his first piano concertos contained no original music by him at all. They were arrangements of works by other composers he was studying. Mozart's first work, considered a masterpiece today, his Piano Concerto No. 9, was composed when he was 21. Now, 21 is incredibly young, but by that point, he'd already undergone 18 years of extremely rigorous, expert-led training. He wasn't born a genius. He became one through intense, focused work, guided by an expert teacher. The same pattern shows up with the modern Mozart of golf, Tiger Woods. Tiger's father, Earl, was a teacher and a passionate golfer himself. He put a golf club in Tiger's hands at 7 months old. He set up Tiger's high chair in the garage so the baby could watch him hit balls into a net for hours, like a movie playing on repeat. By age 2, Tiger was practicing on a golf course regularly. When Tiger reached the highest levels of international competition, he'd been practicing with fierce intensity for 17 years, first under his father, then with professional coaches. When asked to explain his success, neither Tiger nor his father ever mentioned an inborn gift. Their answer was always the same: hard work. So if it's not experience, and it's not natural talent, what is it? The answer, the central idea of this entire book, is a concept researchers call deliberate practice. And this isn't just practice the way we normally think of it. It's not hitting a bucket of balls at the driving range or mindlessly running through scales on the piano. Deliberate practice is different. It's special. And it's the engine behind all exceptional performance. Geoff Colvin breaks it down into 5 key elements. First, deliberate practice is an activity specifically designed to improve performance. It's not just doing something repeatedly. It's working on a specific aspect of your skill that needs improvement. And here's the crucial part. It's almost always designed by a teacher or coach. Why? Because a good coach can see things you can't, and knows the most effective methods for developing skills in your field. The goal of this design practice is to push you just outside your comfort zone. A professor named Noel Tichy calls this the, quote, learning zone. It's that sweet spot where things are just a little too hard. You can't do them easily, but they're not so impossible that you give up. That's where growth happens. Most of us, when we practice, stay in our comfort zone. We do what we're already good at because it feels good. Exceptional performers, though, actively hunt down what they're not good at. The second element is that it can be repeated extensively. High repetition separates practice from performance. A quarterback might only face a certain defensive formation a few times in a season, but in practice, he can run that play 100 times. This massive volume of repetition builds the skill so that when the real moment arrives, it's automatic. Baseball's greatest hitter, Ted Williams, would practice swinging until his hands bled. That's the level of repetition we're talking about. Third, Feedback on results is continuously available. A former Goldman Sachs executive once said that practicing without feedback is like bowling through a curtain that hangs down to your knees. You can work on your form all day, but if you can't see which pins you're hitting, you'll never improve, and eventually you'll stop caring. Feedback tells you what's working and what isn't, allowing real-time adjustments. For a musician, it's the sound of the note. For a chess player, it's comparing your move to a grandmaster's move. For many of us, it's the critique of a coach or mentor. Fourth, it's highly demanding mentally. Deliberate practice isn't relaxing. It's an act of intense focus and concentration. You have to be fully present, analyzing every mistake and every success. The work is so draining that even the world's top performers can only handle about 4 or 5 hours daily, usually broken into sessions of 60 to 90 minutes. The legendary violinist Nathan Milstein was once asked by his teacher if he was practicing enough. The teacher replied, "Practice with your fingers, and you need all day. Practice with your mind and you will do as much in 1.5 hours. And finally, the fifth element, which follows from all the others, it isn't much fun. Let's be honest. Doing things we're already good at is enjoyable. Deliberate practice is the exact opposite. It's about constantly confronting your weaknesses, failing over and over, and pushing yourself to the point of mental and physical exhaustion. Top researchers in the field state it plainly. It is not inherently enjoyable. But here's the good news. The fact that it's hard is precisely what makes it so powerful. It means most people won't do it. So your willingness to engage in it becomes the very thing that separates you from the crowd. To see what this looks like in action, let's leave music and sports for a moment and look at one of the greatest football players of all time, Jerry Rice. By every measure, Rice was the most dominant wide receiver in National Football League history. His records for receptions, touchdowns, and yards aren't just slightly better than second place. They're about 50% better, a staggering gap in a league of elite athletes. What made him so exceptional? Everyone agrees. He worked harder than anyone else. In team workouts, after catching a pass, he wouldn't just jog back to the huddle. He'd sprint to the end zone every single time. But his real secret was his off-season workouts. 6 days a week, entirely on his own, he engaged in a brutal regimen. Mornings were for running a hilly 5-mile trail, including 10 40-meter sprints up the steepest section. Afternoons were for equally grueling weight training. His workout was so legendary that other professional players who tried to join him would sometimes get sick before the day ended. This perfectly illustrates deliberate practice. His practice was designed to build the exact skills he needed. Hill sprints gave him explosive acceleration. Endurance running gave him a massive advantage in the fourth quarter when everyone else was exhausted. It involved massive repetition. The feedback was his own body telling him if he could push harder. It was mentally demanding. And it certainly wasn't fun. But here's the most fascinating part. One of the greatest football players in history spent less than 1% of his work time actually playing football games. The other 99% was spent on deliberate practice, activities designed to make him better. This is the exact opposite of how most of us approach our work. We just show up and play the game every day. We don't have activities designed to stretch us, we don't get constant feedback, and we certainly don't focus on our weaknesses. And that's why, after years of experience, we don't get much better. Some of the most compelling evidence for deliberate practice comes from a fascinating study at the Berlin Academy of Music. Researchers divided violin students into 3 groups: the best, who had the potential for international solo careers; the merely good, who were expected to become professional orchestra members; and the okay, who were headed toward teaching careers. They found that all 3 groups started playing at around the same age, and they all spent about the same total amount of time on music-related activities each week. But there was one huge difference. The students all agreed that the single most important activity for improvement was practicing alone, yet the amount of time they actually did it varied dramatically. The top 2 groups practiced alone for about 24 hours a week. The merely good group practiced for only 9 hours a week. And this advantage was cumulative. By age 18, the best violinists had accumulated, on average, over 7,400 hours of solitary practice. The good violinists had only accumulated about 3,400 hours. The top performers had simply put in more than double the hours of deliberate practice. There was no evidence of a fast track for high achievers. No one became great without putting in the hours of hard, focused work. So how does all this demanding practice actually work? What is it doing to our minds and bodies that creates such extraordinary skill? Colvin explains that it fundamentally changes us in 3 ways. It enables us to perceive more, know more, and remember more. Let's start with perceiving more. Top tennis players can return serves that travel at 150 miles per hour. You might think they just have superhuman reflexes, but they don't. Their reaction time isn't much better than an average person's. So how do they do it? Researchers who tracked their eye movements discovered the secret. Average players watch the ball, but the best players, in the split second before the serve, are watching the opponent's hips, shoulders, and arms. These subtle cues tell them where the ball is going before it's even hit. They're not reacting faster. They're seeing the future a fraction of a second earlier than the rest of us. They've trained their perception. This same principle applies everywhere. Expert radiologists see more clues in an X-ray than residents do. Expert firefighters can look at a blaze and predict what it will do next, while a novice just sees flames. Through years of practice, they learn to see the patterns that an untrained eye misses. Next, deliberate practice helps us know more. And not just more facts, but a deeper, more organized kind of knowledge. The best performers build what are called mental models, highly complex and sophisticated frameworks for understanding their domain. When researchers gave physics problems to beginners and expert physicists, the beginners sorted the problems by their surface features. This one has an inclined plane. That one involves a spring. The experts, however, sorted them by the underlying physics principles needed to solve them, like Newton's second law. They saw the deep structure of the problem, not just the superficial details. This is why deep domain knowledge is so critical in business. The most successful companies are often led by people who've spent a very long time in one industry, developing a rich mental model of how it works. They understand the system at a level that a general manager just passing through never could. Finally, deliberate practice helps us remember more. We've all been amazed by experts who seem to have photographic memories. Chess grandmasters can play dozens of games simultaneously while blindfolded. Executives like Jack Welch were famous for remembering tiny details from financial statements. Are they born with super memories? Again, the research says no. Their memory is an acquired skill. In a famous experiment, researchers showed chess masters and novices a chessboard with pieces arranged from a real game for just 5 seconds. The masters could remember the position of every single piece, while the novices could only remember 4 or 5. But then, the researchers repeated the experiment, this time with pieces placed randomly on the board. The result? The masters were no better than the novices. This proved they didn't have amazing memories in general. They had an amazing ability to remember real chess positions. Through thousands of hours of study, they'd learned to see the board not as a collection of individual pieces, but as meaningful chunks, like words in a sentence. A novice sees 25 random letters. A master sees a 5-word phrase. This is what researchers call long-term working memory. It's the ability to use your vast store of knowledge as a framework to instantly organize and recall new information. It's a skill, and it's built, slowly and painstakingly, through deliberate practice. This brings us to maybe the deepest and most human question of all. If deliberate practice is so grueling, so demanding, and so unenjoyable, why does anyone do it? Where does the passion come from to endure 19 years of training, like figure skater Shizuka Arakawa, who fell on the ice an estimated 20,000 times on her way to an Olympic gold medal. The drive, Colvin argues, is almost always intrinsic. It comes from within. But, and this is a critical distinction, intrinsic doesn't necessarily mean innate. It doesn't mean you're born with it. Passion, like skill, develops over time. For most exceptional performers, the initial push was actually external. Their parents made them practice. They wanted to please a teacher or win a small competition. But at some point, a switch flips. Their motivation becomes their own. Researchers believe this happens through something called the multiplier effect. Here's how it works. A child might have a very small, almost unnoticeable advantage in something, maybe slightly better coordination. This allows them to be just a little bit better at baseball than their friends. That small success brings a little bit of praise from a parent or coach. That praise feels good, so the child is motivated to practice a little more. That extra practice leads to more improvement, which leads to more success, which brings more praise and recognition. It creates a powerful self-reinforcing cycle. A small initial advantage gets multiplied over and over, building both skill and motivation along the way. And the initial trigger doesn't even have to be a genetic advantage. It could be starting to practice at a slightly earlier age than your peers. It could be growing up in a smaller town where it's easier to stand out. It could even be a teacher or parent who simply believes you're special and treats you that way, sparking the motivation to live up to that belief. The passion to master something isn't a mysterious gift you're born with. It's a fire that's kindled by small successes, then stoked by the feedback loop of practice and achievement. So what does this all mean for you? It means the path to exceptional performance isn't hidden. It's right there in front of us. It begins with understanding that your abilities aren't fixed. They're expandable. It continues with finding a teacher or coach who can design the right kind of practice for you. And it's sustained by the belief, the deep, unshakable belief, that if you do the work, you will get better. The journey is long. The work is hard. Most people will choose not to take it. But the evidence in talent is overrated shouts one liberating truth. Greatness isn't reserved for a chosen few. It's available to you and to anyone who wants it badly enough to do what it takes. As we wrap up our journey through Geoff Colvin's Talent is Overrated, I want to leave you with a few thoughts on why this book is so important, especially right now for someone your age. The most powerful message, the one I hope stays with you long after you've finished listening, is that you're not defined by your natural abilities. We live in a world that loves to label people. He's a math person. She's not artistic. He's a natural athlete. This book gives you permission to reject all of that. It tells you that your potential isn't some fixed quantity written in your DNA. It's a capacity that can be grown. That's an incredibly empowering idea. It means your future isn't something you discover. It's something you build. The second big idea is the profound difference between working and improving. Most of the world just works. They show up, do their tasks, and go home. They're trapped by experience, repeating the same level of performance for years. But the path to greatness is the path of deliberate improvement. It's the conscious, focused effort to get better, day after day. This is a choice. You can choose to just do your homework, or you can choose to analyze why you got a certain problem wrong and practice that specific type of problem until you master it. You can choose to just play your sport, or you can choose to work with a coach on the one weakness in your game that's holding you back. This mindset shift, from doing to improving, is the foundation of all high achievement. So how can you start applying these principles today? It doesn't have to be some monumental effort. Start small. First, identify your learning zone in one area of your life. Pick one skill, whether it's for school, a hobby, or a sport, and ask yourself, what's one specific thing that's just a little beyond my current ability? Maybe it's a specific type of math problem, a difficult musical passage, or a particular technique in a sport. This week, dedicate just 15 to 20 minutes a day to working on only that thing. Feel the struggle. That's the feeling of growth. Second, Seek out high-quality feedback. The next time you turn in an assignment or finish a practice, don't just ask, "How did I do?" Ask a better question. Go to your teacher, your coach, or a mentor and ask, "What's one specific thing I could do to improve?" Listen carefully to their answer, and then make that the focus of your next practice session. Feedback is a gift. Treat it that way. Finally, start building your mental model. Read about the history of the field you're interested in. Study the work of exceptional performers who came before you. Understand the principles that govern success in that domain. Knowledge isn't a burden to creativity and performance. It's the soil in which they grow. We've covered a lot of ground today, but I'll be honest with you. A summary can only take you so far. The real magic happens when you read the book for yourself. It's in those quiet moments, when a particular story or simple phrase hits you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is designed to help you decide if talent is overrated is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, I truly hope you'll pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see yourself and your potential. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep growing together.